by the Associated Press, all 5 people aboard are believed to be dead, according to the company OceanGate Expeditions. Now, prior to this tragedy, a CBS story on the Titan submarine, which has gone viral, and we know why. Take a look.
Environmental submersible vessel that has not been approved or certified by any regulatory body and could result in physical injury, disability, emotional trauma, or death. Where do I sign? Oh, take your shoes off, that's customary, okay? Wow.
Inside, the sub has about as much room as a minivan.
So this is not your grandfather's submersible. We only have one button, that's it. It should be like an elevator. You know, it shouldn't take a lot of skill.
And yet, I couldn't help noticing how many pieces of this sub seemed improvised.
We can use these off-the-shelf components. I got these from Camper World. We run the whole thing with this game controller.
Come on!
Now, these were comments made again before the submarine went down and before we found out, before they even took the trip, obviously. Our condolences to the family and friends of the people who died in this submarine. I wanna bring in Yasmin before we go any further. And also to let you all know that years before the submarine went missing, OceanGate was warned about major safety issues. Yasmin?
Yeah, a lot of people in comment sections under news articles about this story are upset that the story is getting so much coverage. And to an extent, I certainly see where they're coming from, and I agree with them to a certain extent, right? But the reason it's getting so much coverage is because, for one, it's a very unusual story that speaks to some macabre obsession that we all sort of have with not only death, but isolation and loneliness and darkness and helplessness. But on top of that, this story is such an interesting depiction of classism, something that Americans in particular, I think, are generally less willing to acknowledge outright as an influential and really integral component of our society. But even on top of all of that, the issue of regulation is a glaring one, particularly in the way that it's often seen as an opposing force to ego, right? Everyone wants to be a disruptor, everyone wants to be first, everyone wants to be the one to change the world for everyone else. People are obsessed with legacy and memory because, ironically, we have this morbid obsession with death. In the case of the Titan and OceanGate, safety concerns were dismissed and safety regulations were nixed because someone with a lot of money wanted to do something great for the sake of doing something great for the sake of ego, even if that meant sacrificing the safety of others. And unfortunately, this isn't at all an unusual occurrence in our world, but this issue, this whole Titan fiasco, it is a very acute example of that phenomena exactly, which is probably another reason why this story has been so impactful to so many people.
Yeah, true that, Yasmin. And as we can see, of course, before the submarine went down, the footage that we showed when he was reading the stipulations, what could possibly happen, and he joyfully said, sign me up. The point that you're making about regulations, I mean, sometimes you got to protect people from themselves, and I just don't understand who on God's green earth thought that this was a good idea and thought it was okay to allow them to do this. That is, to your point, why regulations are important. Now, this reporting from CBS News, lawsuits and industry experts have raised serious safety concerns about the project years before the sub's disappearance. In 2018, a professional trade group warned that OceanGate's experimental approach to the design of the Titan could lead to potentially catastrophic outcomes, according to a letter from the group obtained by CBS News. And unfortunately, they proved to be prophetic in this instance. That same year, an employee of OceanGate raised safety concerns about the Titan's design and the company's protocol for testing the hull's reliability. The employee, David Lockridge, was fired by OceanGate after airing his complaints to government regulators and OceanGate's management, with the latter then suing him for breach of contract. You know, they got some nerves, and I hope that that employee can, get. And thank God that employee had the decency and the moral fortitude to say something is wrong and to report it to the Fed so that something can be done. And I hope that he can sue them again. They need to be put out of business. State, federal government, don't play with these fools. Put them out of business. They just killed people. And you were forewarned before this happened. So there are a lot of people who were complicit and a lot of people who have some blood on their hands for this. My stunt double weighed in on the issue referring to the viral CBS report. This is a glaring example of how important regulation is. Duh. You know, I mean, my 2-year-old and my 3-year-old, they understand that. Toddlers understand that they need regulations. And then you got folks who got power who playing these games because of money. And as Yasmin laid out there, I mean, just what, bored to death, bored to tears, you gotta do stuff like this? It just doesn't make any sense. This is a sad and ridiculous loss of life. It should never have happened. Now, OceanGate CEO Stockton Rush explained how the company picks their pilots. Stockton Rush is one of the 5 passengers. Rush said he valued captains who were inspirational over experience. Really? Noting that anybody can drive the sub, which is controlled with a $30 video game controller. Man, I mean, I side deeply on this. Rush stated, I wanted our team to be younger, to be inspirational, and I'm not going to inspire a 16-year-old to go pursue marine technology, but a 25-year-old, who's a sub pilot or a platform operator or one of our techs can be inspirational. So we're really tried to get very intelligent, motivated younger individuals involved because we're doing things that are completely new. Longevity has its place. I'm quoting Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Period. Longevity does have its place, and in a lot of fields, you want people who got some seasoning on them. I mean, God bless younger folks, but you need, in some of these cases, you need a little seasoning. And unfortunately, they took this a little too lightly. Now, same submarine submersible lost for 5 hours in 2022. OceanGate turned the Wi-Fi off. So this happened before. The feds know that this happened before. This is not new. They turned the Wi-Fi off on the mothership so passengers couldn't tweet out about the mishap. They should have been stopped then. CBS correspondent who previously went aboard the vessel said the following: the vessel got lost for several hours during a dive in 2022. They could still send short texts to the sub, but did not know where it was. Pogue wrote, it was quiet and very tense, and they shut off the ship's internet to prevent us from tweeting. Now, if that is not a red flag, I don't know what is. Now, it was estimated the vessel had most likely run out of oxygen this morning. An update prediction by the US Coast Guard Wednesday said the Titan was likely to run out of oxygen around 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Thursday. Yasmin, I mean, I'll give you the final word on this. This is really sad, and it was preventable, and that's why I'm kind of have a tone in my voice about this.
Yeah, of course, we have to remember that this was a voluntary trip that these people paid a lot of money for. But while they may have been made aware to some extent that this was an incredibly risky venture, I believe they signed waivers saying that there is a strong possibility that they might not make it back up above the ocean. I would assume that they trusted that all was being done that could have been done, but as we know now, that simply wasn't the case. And you would think that the story of the Titanic itself would have served as a warning, but history tends to repeat itself. We're seeing a lot of the same patterns from the Titanic disaster itself repeated here. And with all of the technological advancements that we've made over the past 100 years, we're still human and we're still susceptible to human shortcomings. We're eager to push boundaries and prove ourselves, but we're hesitant to admit failure because it's just embarrassing. And that hardly seems worth the loss of life that we've seen here.
Yeah, it's definitely not worse. And one of our viewers, David Morris, condolences to the family, ashamed that the pilot didn't listen to all of the warnings from the experts. And David definitely condolences to the family. And this is really about the company itself. And Yasmin, your points are certainly well taken, Warren, but people didn't totally understand that. I mean, certainly none of those people got aboard that submarine to die. You know, so it's just, and anytime you got to sign something like that, I mean, that's already right there a glaring admission that all is not right. The feds are culpable in this, state government is culpable, a whole bunch of people are culpable in this situation, unfortunately.